speaking of Boise State, let's talk Boise State. Who did they hire as their head coach? Yeah, none other than their interim head coach they had for the last 4 games, Spencer Danielson. Now, I think there's a lot of thoughts on this. There's a lot of moving parts. It's what's crazy though is that I'm sure Boise State fans that are watching this, and I'm sure a couple of you are culprits of this. Some of you wanted Spencer Danielson fired. As your defensive coordinator, you wanted him fired. He was not performing well at all this year. In fact, he stunk. But guess what? He comes in, fills in as head coach, wins the last 3 games of the year. You win the Mountain West, which is crazy.
Kind of stuck with him.
And so it's like you have this interim head coach who ended up winning your conference championship. It's like, would they have also won their conference championship with Andy Avalos? I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, they did it, and you lose the bowl game because you had your third string quarterback and missing some guys, uh, here's the thing: what are the expectations at Boise State? They're high. They're very, 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 very high. Andy Avalos, I mean, his team just won the Mountain West, right? But here's the thing: it's not always enough. Now, did the administration have the hindsight? Do we have the benefit of hindsight? Like, did we know that Boise State was going to win at the time that he was fired? I think Boise State was what 5-5, and they were not atop of the Mountain West yet. They had a chance, but it was like this is just such a weird situation. I'm gonna say like I think that there were possibly better guys out there if they had like looked, if they had really done their due diligence. But here's the thing: Spencer Danielson is a Boise State guy through and through. Now it's not his alma mater, right? But he's been in the last 8 years. He's been there. He's worked up the ranks the last 8 years. So he's been there. He knows the program. He knows what it looks like when it's successful. He knows what it looks like when it's not successful. So if there is anyone that can kind of get back to the Brian Harsin, beginning of the Brian Harsin tenure, the Chris Peterson tenure, it would be potentially Spencer Danielson. I don't know. So for me, this is like good and bad. I don't have a ton of opinions on this because I don't know what Spencer Danielson's going to look like as a head coach. Like, how is he gonna like handle recruiting? Like, what does his staff look like? It's like there's a ton of questions I think to be answered. You lose a guy like Taylon Green in the portal, you, but you do keep, of course, Mad Max, who was competing for that starting quarterback position, who actually did pretty good. You still have Ashton Janty, probably the best, if or one of the best, if not the best, running backs in college football. Your defense was pretty not great this year, but it showed up when it needed to in some big games down the stretch. So it's just very, very, very interesting. So the expectation, it's really 9-10 wins every year and a top
Mountain West champions
Mountain
every
West
other year, or at least
championships,
being in there competing.
top 60 recruiting classes. I mean, you lose a guy like Gatlin Bear. Sure. I mean, Oregon, he'll do great at Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan or wherever he ends up. It's tough to lose players like that. Of course, it's going to happen with coaching staff changeover or turnover, but it's kind of tough. I don't know. He's in a weird spot right now. He is in a weird spot. There's a lot expected of him because there is a lot of continuity with that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any thoughts on staff that he's going to have there? Is it going to be the same staff? Is it going to be
I
what's it going
don't.
to look like?
It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a little bit similar. I mean, he's been there, right? It was an internal promotion to begin with, and then he just kind of kept the job. It's a very fluid transition for him to be in there. I do think it was a little bit almost like not easy, but like it was just kind of there, and it just kind of happened. You mentioned it. I wouldn't call it lazy because obviously I think he deserved the job for sure. But I think there were some other qualified candidates you at least could have really, really considered. And I know that Boise State job is one of that's very, very high up there, especially in the Mountain West. Bush Hampton, I love as the OC. He's a guy that was at that played at Boise State right back in 2004, 2008, coached under Chris Peterson and others as well. He's a really good guy. He was there at Washington when they had Jacob Eason and some others there really balling out. on the offense side of the football. I do like him. I don't know if they're going to do in the portal there in the short term with the quarterback position. You have Maddox Madison, right? He's been there, a freshman that came in and spelled Taylor Green at times and almost started over him a couple games. It was really interesting there what they handled there, but he's off to Arkansas, like you mentioned. But honestly, everyone else they're kind of keeping. I mean, McAllister's been gone for a couple weeks now, but everyone else is kind of there, and it should be kind of run it back and rip it through the Mountain West again next year. I do think the nice part about this hire is we talked about there's a couple different scenarios that these new coaches are going into, right? You mentioned like teams that fired a coach because they were bad and had to come in and rebuild a roster like Nevada, we just talked about. Or you got a coach where you got to replace a guy that had a lot of success and moved up the ranks, like at Tulane, where they got to hire John Sumrall to replace Willie Fritz because of the success he's had there. Two much different scenarios and programs you're walking into, both with their unique challenges, but it's also a lot different. But here you have a guy that was interim coach and is having success and able to come in there, keep the roster together, keep coaching staff together, keep the recruiting class together, and now really focus on getting the guys signed on the dotted line, which he did a good job of. Everyone other than Gatlin Bear, which we kind of saw that coming for a while now. No surprises there, but obviously they'll have their picks in the portal of a lot of guys as well. You retain a guy like Ashton Jeanty, massive for you there. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to get me super excited for this hire, but also like I think the floor is pretty high there, and the floor at Boise State is already pretty darn high with the talent level you have there in the Mountain West. If you can get a guy that continues to maximize that talent that's there, like you mentioned, I don't know how he's going to be recruiting and how he's going to be getting transfer portal guys. They're 80th with their class as it's currently constructed right now. They got a great guy out of the JUCO ranks, Daylon Metoyer, an interior lineman there that they're really high on that Danielson and company was able to keep on them, keep on their side. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of I don't know. I don't know. I like it. It doesn't don't love it. Don't get me super excited. But at the same time, like they won with him. They played the best football all year under him, and I'm sure he's going to do well at Boise State.
Yeah, to me though, it was kind of a quote unquote down year in the Mountain West, I think. I mean, when San Diego State is not clicking, that kind of inherently means that the Mountain West is a little bit down. I I just think like the clock is ticking, right? Like Sean Lewis is over there at San Diego State. I think Jay Norvell is doing some good things at Colorado State. San Jose State's looked good the last several years. Troy Calhoun's gonna be a dude. I mean, just like they need to capitalize in these next couple years. Like to me, my expectation is that this team competes for another Mountain West championship next year immediately, right? I mean, Barry Odom, UNLV. I mean, just you got some good coaches, I feel like, in the Mountain West for next year in these next couple of years. So to me, the clock is ticking. And I just don't know. Like if your expectations 9, 10 wins a year, right? And you start scheduling some difficult out of conferences, especially with the 12-man playoff, right? It's like you can get a nice, really good out of conference win and then do well in the Mountain West. Like that's how you get into the
There's a
playoffs.
group of five spot, isn't there? That 12 seed's a group of five spot.
Yes, but like it's going to require you playing a pretty tough out of conference game, and I think these G5 coaches are going to start doing that. Like, not that's going to be like Boise State. I don't think would schedule Alabama necessarily or Ohio State, but they'll start scheduling some tough ones and like
Go get Arkansas. Go get Arizona State. Go get teams like that you can compete with and win these games.
yeah. I mean, so my expectation, like it's 9, 10 wins, Mountain West championship, yada yada yada. We talked about it. Top 65 recruiting class. Can Spencer Danielson do it? Yes. Do I believe in him to do it? Like to be the guy for Boise State? I don't know that I do. So I'll give this one a B minus. I almost gave it a C plus for laziness. I just think that there were some other guys that they could have done their due diligence on, but they clearly like Spencer Danielson, and I'm not inside that program, so the reality is they might have had their eyes on him for a while now. But I like Boise State fans, correct me if I'm wrong, like you were clamoring for this man to get fired like mid-season, like you were clamoring for him to get fired. So what happened in that time? He coached 3 games, I guess, and all of a sudden he's the guy. So I don't know. I don't know. You tell me, fans. Here's this. I'll go C plus then. I'll go C plus. I'm talking myself into it. I'll give this one a C plus.
I'll be a little bit more generous. I'll stick with a B minus there. I think it's I think he can he'll just fall just short of expectations, or he'll meet expectations, not consistently, but every once in a while. I do think like something I didn't mention with Nevada and Jeff Choate, which I meant to do, was the addition of Washington State and Oregon State is gonna hurt you. And it hurts more so teams like Nevada, where I think Boise State's gonna have in a couple years, it's gonna have similar talent level to Oregon State and to Washington State. But like it hurts those teams, and it's an extra half a loss or loss to your schedule every year, which is really tough for you. And next year, in the short term, obviously, you'd love to see them compete in the Mountain West. They do have to play Oregon State. They do have to play Washington State. I kind of don't know exactly how they're going to do with the conference championships and all that other stuff. I don't know if Oregon State and Washington State can play for the conference championship. Um,
I don't know.
I think we'll figure that out when we get there. But they get Oregon. They go to Oregon in week 2 there, so that'll be tough, obviously, for Boise State after they went to see Washington this year and played obviously a damn good football team and lost pretty badly. But yeah, it's they I don't know. You mentioned Mountain West. You got to be up in the top 2, top 3 every year. You got to start recruiting well, better than you did this year, which I'm sure you will, and see where it goes from there. Yeah, I think B minus is where it'll be at, and but also like this was such a big time hire for them. This was you mentioned that the 12-team playoff. Like this is the hire you had to get right to make the playoffs
Yeah,
and to do some things and to really elevate your program. You want to talk about the future of college football? Nobody knows what all these conferences are going to be doing. Boise State doesn't want to be left behind in the Mountain West, right? Like if you continue to win football games, you continue to win and make the playoffs and compete in some of these games. Like that's 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 a good sign for you to be able to move up and to eventually like keep your head above water there with everyone else sinking. So this is a big time hire. Doesn't get me super excited. It is what it is. B minus. I'm sure he'll win, but I don't know if he can really elevate that program back to the Peterson, back to the Brian Harsin, and really be the power of the group of 5.